Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle. This is the podcast where we take a look at just the first episode of a series, the pilot, and then use it to play a judge, jury, and executioner on the entire series. On this episode of The Pilot Principle, we are checking out episode 1 of Disney Plus's jaunty and raunchy drama series Rivals. Rivals dives into the ruthless world of TV, where it's every man and woman for themselves. Like last week's Sweet Pea, Rival was another show that has been absolutely up in my business thanks to the advertising. I could not so much as swipe for more than 30 seconds on any social media feed without coming across some sort of poster or teaser for this program. However, there were two reasons why I knew I was going to watch Rivals. Firstly, because it's not a police drama, and as much as I love a police drama, it's good to see what else we can do in the UK, you know? And the second reason that I knew I was going to watch Rivals is because I used to work at a library. Yeah, I know, shocker, right? But at this library specifically, there was a copy of Jilly Cooper's Riders on the shelf that stared at me all the time. And so when I saw that Jilly Cooper's Rivals was being turned into a series, it just kind of felt like a weird sense of destiny, and I was basically compelled to watch. Now, before we get into talking about character and plot and all that shebang, let us run through some context, some behind the scenes information for the pilot episode. The untitled episode 1 tells us that Declan joins TV boss Tony, who clashes with enemy Rupert. Which of the rivals will win? Win what? Declan, Tony, Rupert. It's just a bit of a clunky synopsis for me personally. But moving on, we have an episode length of 54-ish minutes and a series length of 8 episodes. Rivals in the UK is available to watch on Disney Plus and on Hulu in the US. The untitled pilot was written by Dominic Treadwell Collins, who hasn't actually written very much in the realm of television. And by that, I mean he's written one thing: Holding. However, Treadwell Collins has in fact produced 1,300 episodes of EastEnders, so feeling pretty confident in his ability to handle neighbourhood rivalry and hijinks. The pilot was directed by Elliot Hegarty, who has directed episodes of Ted Lasso, Cheaters and Lovesick. He's also directed a random bout of American TV shows, so good for him. Moving on to cast, and we have a bit of an ensemble going on. Well, I say ensemble, but David Tennant is the one standing front and centre of most of the posters I've seen for this show. So Tennant plays a character called Lord Tony Baddingham, and if you don't know, David Tennant has starred in the likes of Doctor Who, Good Omens and Inside Man. He is also going to have a role in the upcoming The Thursday Murder Club movie coming to Netflix soon. Next on the selected cast list, we have Aidan Turner, who plays Declan O'Hara. Turner is known to most from his role as the titular character in the series Poldark and as playing the attractive hobbit Killy in the Hobbit trilogy, and most recently he starred in the series 15 Love. And finally on the selected cast list, we have Alex Hassel, who plays Rupert Campbell-Black. Hassel has starred in The Boys, Cowboy Bebop and His Dark Materials. The pilot also stars Catherine Parkinson, Nafessa Williams, Victoria Smurfit, Emily Attack, Luke Pasqualino and Danny Dyer. And finally to note that Rivals, the series, is in fact based on the best-selling 1988 book of the same name by Dame Jilly Cooper, who at 87 is still writing. I love that for her. Do not forget, if you really want to, you can follow me over on Instagram and Twitter at Pilot Principle. Technically, you can follow me on TikTok too, but that's more for bookish and filmish things these days, at A Writer of Sorts. Any Marvin Humes, we are here to talk pilots. Therefore, let's get into talking about the first 10 minutes of the unnamed pilot of Rivals. Why the first 10 minutes, you wonder every week? Well, crew, that is because without a solid foundation to the pilot, which is what the first 10 minutes are, then the rest of the episode could crumble. So the first 10 minutes goes like this. We meet Rupert Campbell-Black. Well, we meet his ass as he joins the Mile High Club with a journalist named Beatty. Also on board his flights from New York to the UK is Lord Tony Baddingham, who owns the TV station Corinium and is quick to tear Rupert a new one, which is handy for us as we get a quick picture of Rupert. He is an ex-champion show jumper, now backbench politician who has never quite reached the same level of success that he had when he was an athlete. Ouch. And then we are hit with the intro. The intro was illuminating. It told me that the series is about a lot more than I assumed, which honestly was just like sexy romance. When we come back to the pilot after the intro, we are at BBC Television Centre and we meet Declan O'Hara, who interviews the Deputy Prime Minister. However, every time Declan tries to go for the hard-hitting questions, his producer shuts him down due to policy and restrictions, etc. Declan is pissed, which makes Tony's timing perfect. He swoops in to offer Declan his own live show with complete editorial control and a move to the idyllic Cotswolds, and a signing bonus to boot. You can see that if Declan says yes, he's basically signing his soul to the devil. But with all those perks, even I'd be tempted to say yes. Rolling country hills, sprawling estates, lawns as helicopter landing pads, and horse riding. The O'Hara family, Declan, his wife Maud, and his daughters Taggy and Caitlin arrive at their new home in Rutshire. Maud looks up at their mansion and says, "Prettiest prison I ever saw." And that is the 10-minute mark. What I think was great about the opening is that it starts as it means to go on. I'm talking the sex in the forbidden places with forbidden people. Also, we got a nice close-up shot of Beatty's red heel at the start, which was a nice nod to the original Rivals cover. Content-wise, the opening did a really good job of introducing us to the three main male leads and allowing us to get a better understanding of their characters, as well as subtly letting us know when this is all taking place. This is done through the music, so there's a lot of Wham and other 80s bands that I cannot recall playing in the background a lot of the time. The characters talk about the technological limitations and the future, i.e. digital television is on the horizon, and they talk about the fact that Rupert Campbell-Black is part of Thatcher's administration. Ergo, we know that this is taking place in the 80s. We are introduced to a lot of characters in the pilot episode, but they all surround three white men, which I'm not against. I'm just giving you an accurate portrayal of our main characters. And the first white male, no, I'm kidding, I'll stop. But let's go through each of the main characters in order of introduction. So the first person we meet is Lord Tony Baddingham, who I'm going to call like Baddie or Bads or Badman for short. So, no, I can't say Badman with a straight face. So Baddingham, Bads, is a hustler. Despite the title, he definitely gives like new money vibes, and we do in fact learn, which is a sore point between him and Campbell-Black, that his family didn't come into their wealth or title that long ago in British standards. Bads is a man who goes after what he wants by any means necessary and makes sure that he can get it. And we see this in the way he poached American producer Cameron from NBC and Declan from the BBC, both for his network Corinium. Right now, Bads has his eye on securing his network Corinium a longer deal or something because it might be shut down. Not gonna lie, this was a little unclear to me. At the start of the pilot, Bads is a self-assured man who knows how to play the game, and we see this in the way that he knows how to press the right buttons when it comes to Campbell-Black. We do get slight chinks in his armour when Bads overhears Campbell-Black basically calling him a beg, and there is a slight twitch in his eye when this conversation happens. Also, Bads has a half-brother who apparently his dad preferred, even though he wasn't biologically his son. So Baddingham clearly has a repressed inferiority complex. Ultimately, though, Lord Tony Baddingham has an empire to conquer, and he has no time to show any weakness, and so he is exactly who we meet at the start of the pilot episode, as he knows exactly what to do to get his own back at Rupert Campbell-Black for his remarks. Speaking of Rupert Campbell-Black, CB for short, he is the man, the myth, the legend that apparently every woman who lays eyes on him wants. They all swoon after him, everybody. All over the place. Everybody except for me. I seem to be immune to his charms. But, you know, logically, I can see the appeal. CB is cocky, he's wealthy and has nothing but time on his hands as an ex-show jumper / MP living in the country. Now, clearly CB misses competitive show jumping and needs some sort of vocation, and his rivalry with Bads clearly fills some of his boredom. At the start and throughout the pilot, we watch him sleep with one woman and play naked tennis with another, who is technically married. We also watch as CB makes eyes at O'Hara's daughter, Taggy. Towards the end of the episode, we get a look inside the infamous Rupert Campbell-Black, and what we see is emptiness. His house is empty, save for the group of dogs that rush to greet him when he arrives, and there are also framed photos of the dogs on various surfaces too. Basically, at the end of the night, CB goes to bed alone. Clearly, this side of him is reserved only for the audience, and I suppose we're supposed to feel sorry for the lonely aristocrat. And I'm not saying that we don't. I'm just saying that the next day, he basically rocks up to Bad's office and says, "Don't F with me," because Baddington basically revealed his affair with naked tennis lady, and now BT, the journalist who he was sleeping with, has sworn to ruin him. So yeah, not quite feeling sympathetic for the old chap, but I respect the effort. The final character to talk about is Declan O'Hara, and O'Hara is the man who sold his morals for a paycheck. Alternatively, you could say that he saw an opportunity to produce the kind of journalism he thinks people deserve to have for a large paycheck. Now, we don't get much of a change in his personality from when we meet him at the start of the episode. However, there are a few moments where it does look like he is strongly regretting getting into bed with Baddingham and the whole posh lot in Rutshire. Oh, also, before I forget, the house that the O'Haras move into, or the mansion, or whatever, the country estate, am I going completely mad, or is that the same house that Poldark lived in Poldark? I mean, it's been a few years, but I was getting mad deja vu. Am I the only one? Let me know. The only other thing to say about O'Hara is that he possibly has marital issues. His wife Maud has possibly cheated on him in the past. Unclear in the pilot episode, but it definitely feels like it's something in that direction. Also, O'Hara has a secret that Baddingham knows about. We don't know, but Baddingham knows. So we shall see if O'Hara can keep his moral compass facing north throughout the series. You know, if you choose to watch that far. Now, Lord Tony Baddingham, Rupert Campbell-Black and Declan O'Hara represent different tiers of the class system, specifically the shark-infested waters of the middle class, upper class and aristocracy. Their currency of power and the rules that they follow are completely foreign to the rest of us povos. Now that is a slight exaggeration, but the gauche nature of which all of that is explored throughout Rivals is quite fascinating. And now it is time for a quick interlude to see what else I am up to beyond the pilot principle. Starting as always with books, and I'm embarrassed. Okay? I'm embarrassed and I am ashamed. Therefore, I have stopped reading Birnam Wood by Eleanor Catton. Listen, I just kept talking about this book and how I was going to read it every episode for the last 5 episodes, and I don't think I even reached 50 pages, so I'm calling it quits. And instead I have pivoted and started reading 13 by Steve Cavanaugh. At this point, I have definitely gotten further than Birnam Wood, which isn't really saying much. And the best way for you to get an idea of what this book is about is for me to just read you the tagline, because this is what convinced me to pick up the book in the first place. The serial killer isn't on trial. He's on the jury. That sounds good, right? I'll keep you posted. Moving over to film, and this was the final week of BFI's London Film Festival. I believe the last time I checked in, I was planning to watch The Seed of the Sacred Fig, which I did. And that was an interesting exploration of the overturning of government in Iran, told through the family of a lawyer who signed death warrants. I then watched Hard Truths, which is about a woman who's having a hard time. Actually, do you know what? I'm not going to lie. I can't quite put into words what this film is about. However, Marion Jean-Baptiste, who stars in the movie, which was directed by Mike Leigh, was very, very good in her role as Pansy. I watched Night Bitch, which is Amy Adams' new movie about a mother who is turning into a dog. And it's a take on just being truthful and honest about feelings on motherhood. Really good film. I watched We Live in Time, which is the Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh movie. And normally I have a rule that if Andrew Garfield cries, I cry. But I'm not going to lie, I didn't cry. Everybody is saying that this movie is a tearjerker and it surrounds a couple and a cancer diagnosis changes the trajectory of their lives. I think it's a really well-meaning film, but it just didn't quite connect for me. And lastly, I watched Maria, which stars Angelina Jolie in the titular role, about the final days of an opera singer. And this one is a biographical movie. I only watched that this morning, so I can't say too much in it. And I know I've barely said much about these 5 movies, but I will be going into further detail over on my blog, which you can find probably linked in my Instagram bio, ? Overall though, I really enjoyed London Film Festival and hopefully I get to do it again and make use of going to those gala screenings and a few more industry talks, because those 8:30 a.m. press starts pretty much killed me. I'm not a morning person. And finally, moving over to TV land, I actually did very well for myself, I'll have you know. I watched 2 whole series. The first thing I watched was Tomb Raider, The Legend of Lara Croft, and this was a really easy, fun watch. I think it's 8 episodes. It's on Netflix. I do think it got a bit where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, because each episode Lara was jetting off to a different country to follow clues to get to some ancient blah blah blah. Also, I don't know if this is just me, but I got some parallels with Avatar: The Last Airbender, specifically The Legend of Korra. Lara and Korra seemed quite similar. Also in the whole Avatar lore, balance was a big feature. Balance was a big feature in the Lara Croft series. Yeah. Did anybody else get that, or is that just me? And the second series that I finished in the space of a week, less even, is English Teacher, and that was over on Disney Plus in the UK and I believe FX in the States. And this was really enjoyable. I just breezed through it. The series is about a gay English teacher in, I want to say Texas? Yeah, Texas. And it's just a lot of fun. It's just snippets of his life as a teacher and his friends. It's funny, it's wacky, it stars, what's his name? I want to say Enrico something. Keith Mars's character from Veronica Mars, and I love that guy even though I cannot remember his name. So yeah, those are the 2 shows that I happened to binge this week. Look at me, I'm a binger now. And I would definitely recommend both those programs. I'd also really recommend Night Bitch, to be honest with you, out of all the films that I mentioned this week at London Film Festival. Oh, I also did have an announcement for next week's episode, but I'll just save it for later. Let's just get back into talking about the pilot episode of Rivals. We've looked at the beginning and now it's time to look at the end of episode Hook. So Badman Baddingham, Lord Tony Baddingham, sets up Rupert Campbell-Black after he rejects Baddingham's proposal to join the board for Corinium, his TV network production company thing. However, instead of getting CB in trouble, CB gets a promotion to Minister of Sport. CB says to Badman, "You'll have to try harder than that if you want to beat me, Lord Baddingham." And Badman says, "Game on." Also, this is a bit rogue because this is the first time I'm mentioning this character, but Lizzie Verrick, who lives next door to the O'Haras, if you can call it next door when you've got acreage of land between you. She's a writer who hasn't written anything in a while. She basically gave up the pen for family life and clearly regrets it. However, she has found her inspiration for a new book called Rivals, which is not so loosely based on her neighbours the O'Haras, who are fresh meat to the wolves of Rutshire. Ultimately, I would say it's a good conclusion from where the pilot started. We've met all the major players and the game is finally afoot. Now, in terms of the serial arc, I believe we'll end up following whether Declan's show, which is the whole reason Baddingham hired him, we'll find out whether that will be successful. Over the series, we will likely see how different affairs begin and end and are used for blackmail. And finally, we will probably find out if Baddingham's network gets renewed. In terms of the series predictions, I'm thinking Taggy and CB. Something will go down between the two of them. Also, let's not forget that BT, the journalist, said that she's going to ruin CB and hell hath no fury, etc. So that will be interesting to see how she's going to ruin him. Ooh, how would I ruin him? I mean, he's in government, he's also wealthy. I mean, I suppose the best way to ruin someone like that is just to embarrass them. What else? Well, Baddingham, Badman, B-Dot, has has dirt on O'Hara. And so when he decides to use it, I'm guessing that the dirt will either get O'Hara to heal or to bite. And finally, Lizzie's book may or may not end up in the wrong hands and reveal secrets, both true and likely exaggerated, which will have cataclysmic effects on the entirety of Rutshire. Overall, I think the pilot was successful in being super clear about what these people care about. They care about sex, they care about power, and they're all just kind of looking for a way to while away boredom. The pilot had loads of similar characters in the sense that they are all rich and living in the countryside. However, through costume and characteristics, they all stood up on their own, even the ones we only meet briefly, but will likely feature more heavily as the series goes on. And that's what you want in a pilot, you know, memorable people and a clear indication of mood and tone. Tick and tick. On the flippity flip side, I think as a pilot, it was less successful in giving us the full effect of rivaldom. I mean, it's called Rivals, right? And I feel like I wasn't quite getting that, especially between Lord Baddingham and Campbell-Black, who are, from what we can see from the pilot episode, supposed to be these really big rivals. And I think their antagonisms towards each other could have been cemented further than the odd snipes and gripes. I think a clear line about how they've been at each other's throats since, I don't know, Eton, when CB grasped on Bads or, I don't know, something like that, would have helped to anchor their deep-seated distaste for one another. And that would have helped with the pilot setup, for example, making us feel sorry for CB going to bed in this big empty house alone. Personally, for me, in the pilot episode, we meet a character called Cameron, whose last name I do not remember. Cameron is the producer that Bads flew over from New York and poached from NBC, specifically to produce Declan's new show. And she is a fantastic character. Her introduction was beautifully executed, and I just loved that the writing gave her character and situations context and didn't just paint her as the angry black woman with no probable cause. I think that was really well done, and honestly, she is goals, and I'm interested to see how her character will develop throughout the season. Crew, it's time to make a decision. Based on everything I've said, I think Rivals might be for you if you enjoy small town drama. Think Wisteria Lane meets EastEnders, but posh. You will also like Rivals if you don't mind sex and nudity in your shows, because there's a lot of that going on right from the start. And finally, Rivals might be the show for you if you want to dive into a world that isn't typically explored on British television, and especially in this almost unforgiving way. And by that, I'm talking about the upper/aristocratic class. On the flippity flip side, here are the reasons why Rivals might not be for you. Well, technically there is just one main reason, because yes, it is a British show, but it has clearly been made to have an American/international appeal. For example, the pilot has an overexposed wash to it. Then there is, of course, the sex and overdramatics. So basically, if you're looking for a quintessential UK drama, honey, this ain't it. I think I'll be giving the untitled pilot for Rivals a pilot score of 4 out of 5. I think the casting was really well done, and the pilot did a great job of setting up multiple characters and this crazy worldview. And it's interesting. The only thing I didn't fully understand was Corinium, which is the basis of Lord Baddingham's entire operation. And a lot of characters either work there or are closely associated with the TV company, network, place. Unclear, which is a problem. And who knows, we might get more of a feel for this setting in episode 2, but that's not what we're here to judge. You can likely guess what I'm going to do, and that is continue watching Rivals, because so far it is a romping good time, pun intended. So yeah, I'm going to watch the series and find out how all this drama unfolds and if any of my wild series predictions come to pass. Thanks for joining me this week. You know the drill. Tap follow if you're not already following, and don't forget to rate the podcast too. Muchos gracias in advance. Next week, if all goes to plan, that is, we will have a guest on to talk about episode 1 of Tyler Perry's Beauty in the Black. That should be a lot of fun, and I know you're not going to miss it, so I will catch you on the next episode.